My boss fired me because of envy. The next day, karma was cruel to him. My name is Darren McCabe. I'm 46 years old, and for nearly a decade I served as a senior sales executive at Triana Corp, based in Kansas City, Missouri. Over those years, I built a client portfolio that accounted for nearly 40% of the company's revenue. No shortcuts, just long hours, constant travel, and trust-based relationships. I smiled, thanked them for the opportunity, and walked away without argument. Charles Ellsworth had arrived 6 months earlier as our new VP of Sales, brought in by the CEO to revitalize the team. He wore tailored suits, spouted cliched motivational phrases, and never once accompanied me on a client visit. Just 3 weeks after his arrival, he implemented a new commission structure that slashed my earnings by 20%. Despite my consistently solid numbers, the signs were there. My office had been relocated to a corner during renovations. My name disappeared from meeting invitations. Yesterday, I noticed someone snooping through my computer while I was at lunch. Small things, seemingly insignificant on their own, but together they painted a clear picture. Something was brewing. I packed 9 years of my life into a single cardboard box. Family photos, a coffee mug painted by my daughter, and a folder of client contacts I'd kept separate from the company database, just out of habit. "Need help with that?" asked Valerie from accounting, genuinely confused. "Changing offices?" "Something like that," I replied, not wanting to make a scene. In the elevator, I found myself standing next to Everett Stanton, our CEO. He nodded at me absently, eyes glued to his phone. He had no idea what Charles had just done, or what it would mean for quarterly projections, but he'd find out soon enough. As I walked to my car, I didn't feel anger, just an odd sense of clarity, as if I'd woken up from a comfortable dream to realize the house had never truly belonged to me in the first place. I drove home in silence, no calls, no radio, just thinking about tomorrow. My phone buzzed as I pulled into the garage. It was Travis Ricks, my biggest client. His annual contract renewal was scheduled for next week. He'd texted me about dinner reservations when he'd be in town. He didn't know yet. Nobody did. I left my phone on the kitchen counter without replying and stared out the window. 9 years of client relationships, all built on my word and reliability. That day, Charles hadn't just fired an employee, he'd severed the only link connecting Trayvant to millions in revenue, and he didn't even realize it. I joined Trayvant back when it was still Midwestern Financial Services, before the rebranding and swanky downtown office. Everett personally hired me after I came from a competitor where I exceeded targets but was overlooked for promotions. "I want someone who knows this market," he told me. "Someone clients trust." For 7 years, he was right to trust me. I transformed our regional client base into national accounts, expanded contracts from annual terms to 3- and 5-year deals, landed Lockhart Manufacturing when they left our biggest rival, and secured Henderson Group when no one thought we stood a chance. My wife Rebecca often joked that I was married to my clients. "Dinner with the Johnsons again this Thursday?" she'd ask, already knowing the answer. The kids had grown accustomed to me missing football games and recitals. Dad's working became their normal. I promised it would be worth it someday. 3 promotions, 2 office expansions, and a recession later, Trayvant grew from a $4 million operation to a $30 million business, with my accounts responsible for about $12 million of that total. No one calculated the exact percentage until Charles showed up. The first red flag appeared during a quarterly meeting, 3 months after Charles took over sales. "Your customer acquisition rate has stagnated," he said, pointing to a graph, showing I'd added only 2 new accounts that quarter. "Because I'm focused on expanding existing relationships," I explained. "The Lockhart contract doubled." "The future is in new business," Charles insisted. "We need hunters, not farmers." A week later, my executive assistant, Julia, was reassigned. The following month, my travel requests required additional approval. My expense reports came back with questions. Little things. Death by 1,000 cuts. I started hearing whispers about new talent being interviewed, young MBA grads with aggressive pitches and 0 industry experience. Charles called them disruptors. Last month, he hired Alicia Winters, 29, from a tech startup. Her first week, She was assigned to join me on a call with Travis Hriss. No explanation, no proper introduction. Just to show her the ropes. Travis noticed. After the call, he messaged me. "Who's this new girl? Are you training your replacement?" I laughed it off. Just expanding the team. But driving home. That night, I felt something shift in my gut. The kind of certainty that comes from years of reading boardrooms and client faces. Something wasn't right. I should have trusted that feeling sooner. I placed my cardboard box on the kitchen counter and poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey. The house was empty. Rebecca was visiting her sister in Denver, helping with a newborn. It was probably for the best. I needed the silence. I picked up my personal phone and scrolled through my contacts. 9 years of connections, over 200 clients, suppliers, and industry links. People who trusted me to handle their business. People who signed with Trayvant because of me, not corporate marketing or a fancy downtown office. My work phone, now deactivated in the box, contained only official correspondence. Golf outings, dinner invites, CEOs' private numbers, all were on my personal device. Information accumulated by being someone people wanted to work with. I took a sip and felt an eerie calm settle over me. No panic, no despair about mortgages or health insurance, just a clear understanding of what had happened and what would come next. The whiskey burned going down. 9 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and skipped Little League games. 9 years building something I thought was mine, only to discover it never really was. I opened my laptop and reviewed my employment contract. The non-compete clause was there but limited in scope. 1 year, and only applicable if I left voluntarily. Being fired changed everything. There was no legal barrier to taking my clients elsewhere. My phone buzzed again. Travis, a reservation confirmation for dinner on Thursday. Looking forward to discussing renewal. I stared at the message for a long time. Travis Hendress represented $1.7 million in annual business for Trayvant. His company, Lockhart Manufacturing, had been with me for 6 years. Before that, 3 years at my previous company. Nearly a decade of trust. And he wasn't alone. Henderson Group, Westfield Properties, Carlton Industries, together, they totaled another $1.5 million. All had renewals due within 30 days. All dealt exclusively with me. I set my glass down and made a decision. I wouldn't call anyone that night, send angry emails, or make threats. I'd sleep on it, wake up with a clear mind, and make exactly 3 phone calls. Not to complain or vent frustration, just to inform my closest clients that I was no longer with Trayvant, effective immediately. The rest would unfold on its own. I unpacked the family photos from my box. My daughter's graduation, my son's wedding, the Yellowstone trip we almost canceled because of a client emergency. I'd already lost so much. Starting tomorrow, I'd start making different choices. I finished my whiskey and went upstairs to bed in an empty house. For the first time in years, I didn't set my alarm. No early flights, no quarterly projections to review before dawn. Just the quiet certainty that Charles Ellsworth had made a catastrophic mistake. And I didn't need to do anything except step aside and let events take their course. The next morning, I made my 3 calls. No drama, just facts. Travis, I'm no longer with Trayvant as of yesterday. I wanted you to hear it directly from me. His response was immediate. What happened? Who's handling our account now? Charles Ellsworth will likely reach out. Or maybe Alicia Winters. A long pause. The girl from the meeting. She doesn't know our business. That's all I can say. The rest is your decision. Similar conversations followed with James Henderson and Peter Carlton. No suggestions, no recruiting pitches, just information delivered with the same reliability they expected from me. By noon, my personal phone was buzzing constantly. Word spread quickly in this industry. By 2 p.m., Everett Stanton called. I let it go to voicemail. Darren, we need to discuss your transition. Several clients are expressing concerns. Please call back immediately. Instead, I drove downtown to meet Lawrence Finch, an employment lawyer. I'd helped him secure financing for his son-in-law's restaurant 3 years ago. He owed me a favor. They can't stop you from working, Lawrence confirmed after reviewing my termination papers. But they'll try to scare your clients into not following you. Be prepared for that. By 4 p.m., Trevant's legal department sent an email reminding me of confidentiality obligations. At 5 p.m., Charles messaged, "Let's discuss your severance package. Maybe there's room for consulting work." Too late. My phone buzzed again at 5:30 p.m. Travis had just hung up after speaking with his CEO and the VP who fired me. They promised continuity, said Alicia would handle everything personally. Then they offered a 10% discount on renewal. "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That I'd think about it." "I didn't say anything." Travis continued. "I sent a termination notice, citing a change in relationship management. Henderson and Carlton did the same. And still, I said nothing. Darren, where are you landing? Because wherever it is, that's where our company will go." That night, 3 more companies in my portfolio sent termination notices to Trevant. By morning, the total was 8, representing over $3.2 million in contracts. Everett convened an emergency board meeting. I knew because Julia, my former assistant, texted me. "Total chaos here. Charles is trying to blame you for inciting clients. The CEO is asking why no one saw this coming." My phone rang again. An unfamiliar number. "Darren McCabe," I answered. "Michael Grantley here, from Grantley & Company. A smaller competitor, better reputation. I heard you're available and mutual friends speak highly of you. Tell me your story." "Senior VP role, 6-figure signing bonus, full autonomy to manage your accounts, and a seat on the executive committee. When would you like to start?" "How does tomorrow sound?" I accepted on the spot, not out of urgency or desperation, but because it was exactly what I wanted: respect, autonomy, and recognition of the value I brought. Later that day, Charles sent another message. "The board approved a retention package, full salary for 6 months plus stock options. Just help us transfer your accounts." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. They'd had 9 years to value what I'd built. Now they were trying to put a price on it after the fact. Too late. Much too late. A week into my new role at Grantley & Company, Julia called me from a personal number. "You need to know what happened." I sat in my new corner office, larger than the one at Trevant, and listened as 9 years of history rearranged itself into a clearer picture. They'd planned to sell the company, Julia explained. Veritas Capital had made an offer 2 months earlier, but with conditions. They wanted to bring in their own account managers for key clients, integrating them into their portfolio companies. The pieces fell into place. Charles hadn't been hired to boost sales. He'd been brought in to transfer accounts away from me, turning them into corporate assets rather than relationships tied to a single executive. My firing wasn't about performance. It was preparation for acquisition. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "I'm still assigned to the executive suite. I see the documents, hear the conversations." The day before, they'd withdrawn the offer. Veritas wouldn't buy without the client base I'd built. After hanging up, I sat motionless for a long time. 9 years of loyalty, and they were ready to disconnect me from my clients as if I were a disposable intermediary. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd succeeded too much. The relationships were too strong, too personal. They needed me gone before clients could be repackaged as corporate assets. Further research revealed the same pattern. Meetings behind my back, scheduled without my knowledge, information gathered, relationships probed for weaknesses or areas where I might be deemed dispensable. By the end of the day, I confirmed that at least 6 of my top accounts had been secretly introduced to Veritas representatives, all under the guise of strategic consultants or industry advisors. Eventually, I responded to Everett. "No point in meeting. I understand the Veritas situation perfectly." His reply came quickly. "It was a business decision, Darren. Nothing personal." But it was personal. 9 years of building relationships, knowing clients' kids' names and vacation destinations, answering calls on weekends and holidays, all reduced to an obstacle for a corporate transaction. I closed my laptop and looked out at the Kansas City skyline from my new office. The view was different here, clearer somehow. Grantley had already signed contracts with 11 of my former clients, representing nearly $5 million in annual revenue, with more on the way. Not because I recruited them, but because in this field, trust follows people, not logos or corporate strategies. Trayvant hadn't lost just a salesperson. They'd lost the foundation on which their expansion was built, and they still didn't fully understand why. 3 weeks after joining Grantley, I received an invitation to speak at the Midwest Financial Services Conference. The panel topic, Building Client Loyalty in a Transactional Market. The irony wasn't lost on me. I accepted, not out of ego or exposure, but because I knew who'd be in. The audience, industry colleagues, potential clients, and most importantly, Trayvant's remaining leadership. Everett never missed this conference. Neither did the board members. Meanwhile, Grantley gave me resources Trayvant never had. 2 dedicated analysts, marketing support, and, crucially, equity participation. Every client I brought in wasn't just commission. It was something I partially owned. I spent a month preparing for the conference, not with flashy slides or rehearsed anecdotes, but with data. Working late with my analysts, I compiled performance metrics for every client who'd moved from Trayvant to Grantley. The results were undeniable. Average service response times cut by 53%, implementation costs reduced by 30%, and customer satisfaction scores increased by 22 points. This wasn't just about me. It was about proving what happens when companies prioritize relationships over transactions. On the day of the conference, I reviewed my notes one last time. No dramatic revelations, no name-dropping, just facts and results. Professional, measured, devastating. Entering the hotel ballroom, I spotted Everett immediately, huddled with 2 board members near the coffee station. His face tightened when he saw me. I gave a polite nod and moved on. The panel discussion began with standard questions about market trends and technological disruption. When it was my turn, I spoke clearly about what clients truly valued. In an era where everything is automated and digitized, personal accountability has become the rarest commodity, I said. Companies often confuse client relationships with corporate assets. These aren't assets. They're trust agreements between individuals that require constant reinforcement. I presented my data without naming Trayvant, using case studies of clients who'd switched firms and seen immediate improvements. The lesson isn't about retention packages or contractual obligations, I concluded. It's about understanding that when you treat relationship managers as interchangeable parts, clients will show you exactly how wrong that assumption is. During the Q&A session, a young analyst I didn't recognize asked the question everyone was thinking. Your recent move from Trayvant to Grantley, with several major clients following, isn't that exactly the scenario companies fear when considering how much autonomy to give relationship managers? The room fell silent. I could feel Everett's glare piercing me from across the room. Fair question, I replied. But consider the alternative. Trayvant lost those clients not because I took them, but because they failed to understand what those clients truly valued. No one followed me out of personal loyalty. They followed because their needs were consistently better served by my approach to service, an approach my former employer decided was no longer aligned with their direction. I paused, briefly locking eyes with Everett. Every company has the right to change direction, and every client has the right to decide if that new direction serves their interests. The market is brutally efficient that way. After the panel, 3 former Trayvant clients approached me. By the end of the conference, Grantley had signed letters of intent with 5 new accounts, representing an additional $2.7 million in annual revenue. That night I checked the financial news. Trayvant announced a restructuring. Charles Ellsworth was seeking new opportunities. The Veritas acquisition was officially dead. Their stock had dropped another 8%. I closed my laptop without a trace of satisfaction or triumph. Just the quiet certainty that comes from being proven right in the most definitive way possible, by the market itself. The lesson had been delivered. Whether they'd learn it or not was no longer my problem. 6 months after my firing, I was in Grantley's largest conference room, surrounded by my team and company leadership. On the screen behind me, a single slide displayed our quarterly results. $8.4 million new business, 70% coming from former Trayvant clients. Michael Grantley raised a toast to the best deal we never had to buy, and we didn't even need to acquire a company to get it. Polite laughter filled the room. I smiled but didn't join in. This wasn't a celebration for me. It was validation. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Travant Corp announces CEO transition. Everett Stanton steps down amid ongoing revenue challenges. I tucked the phone into my pocket without showing it to anyone. Some victories don't need an audience. Later that afternoon, I received an email from Alicia Winters, the young woman Charles had tried to position as my replacement. I've just been fired, along with most of the sales team. Is there any chance Grantley is hiring? I forwarded it to HR with a note. She's worth interviewing. It's not her fault. As I left the office, my assistant handed me an envelope delivered by courier. Inside was a handwritten note from Everett Stanton. You were right. I prioritized the transaction over the relationship. It cost the entire company. If you're willing to meet for coffee, I'd appreciate the chance to apologize personally. I folded the note and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Maybe someday. Not now. That night, driving home, I passed Travant's headquarters. The sign was being removed from the facade. Local news reported they were downsizing to a smaller suburban office. I didn't slow down, didn't take pictures, just kept driving, eyes fixed on the life I was building on my own terms. Exactly 1 year after Charles slid those termination papers across the conference table, I signed the final documents making me a full partner at Grantley & Company. The firm had grown 34% since my arrival. My client portfolio now represented nearly $20 million in annual revenue. I closed the manila folder containing the partnership agreement and looked out my office window at the Kansas City skyline. Same buildings, same city, but everything else had changed. Rebecca entered with 2 cups of coffee. Signed and official, I nodded. Signed and official. She sat across from me, studying my face. You don't look as happy as I hoped. I'm just thinking about Travant, I shook my head. About what I'm building here. About doing things right this time. That morning I'd approved hiring 3 new account managers, all with the same profit-sharing structure I'd negotiated for myself. No one would build something here only to have it taken away. That was my first act as a partner. My phone buzzed. Travis Hrissard calling to congratulate me. Congratulations, I always knew you'd find your way. Thanks to clients like you. No, he corrected. Thanks to who you are. We're just following the value. After ending the call, I picked up the frame Rebecca had given me last Christmas. A simple quote on parchment. The best revenge is massive success. I turned it face down on the credenza. That chapter was closed. Pulled out my calendar and marked a lunch date with Everett Stanton. Not to gloat, not to relive the past, but because sometimes letting go is necessary to move forward. I turned off my computer, grabbed my keys, and headed out to meet Rebecca. We had tickets to our son's band performance, something I'd never made time for in my previous life. You know, I spent 9 years building something that apparently was never really mine. What delicious irony, isn't it? I was the guy who knew clients, kids by name, who answered Sunday calls as if it were my divine mission, and in the end, I discovered it was all just a disposable detail. The corporate world is fascinating like that. They value your dedication until the moment it becomes inconvenient. Then, well, you become an obstacle to a more lucrative deal. And Charles, oh Charles, what an emblematic figure of modernity. He arrived with his tailored suits and ready-made motivational phrases, cutting my earnings before even offering me a cup of coffee. They said he was the future, but in reality he was just a pawn in the corporate chess game. They wanted to turn my personal client relationships into transferable assets. Almost poetic, isn't it? Except that when they tried to replace trust with a new, cheaper face, they realized the house of cards collapses without the right foundation. Today, as I watch Travant sink under its own short-sighted decisions, I quietly laugh at the cruel beauty of corporate karma. They thought I was expendable, but they ended up proving the opposite. I didn't need to shout or threaten. The market did the dirty work for me. The final lesson? When you treat people like interchangeable parts, they have a funny habit of proving they aren't. In the end, the best revenge really is massive success, and I didn't even need permission to achieve it.